In the modern world, Antarctica is perceived as a symbol of absolute emptiness and cold, a continent where life seems impossible, where temperatures fall beyond the limits of survival, and the landscape is shaped by ice, rock, and relentless wind. Which is why few people ever question the idea that it has always been this way. Yet geology preserves a very different memory, because beneath the thick leaden shell lie traces of an ancient world in which Antarctica was part of a global warm system, a land of rivers, forests, and life-rich soils. And the most striking proof comes from seemingly impossible discoveries, such as fossilized palm leaves, preserved wood fragments, pollen of plants that cannot survive cold climates, and the remains of animals that depended on warmth and stable ecosystems. And these silent witnesses of deep time force us to abandon the notion of Antarctica as an eternally dead continent, turning it instead into a klutch to understanding how dynamic Earth's climate truly is and how radically the planet can transform its face over the course of geological history. To understand this world, one must imagine the Eocene as a time when Earth's climate system followed entirely different rules, when heat was distributed far more evenly across the planet. Oceans acted as massive conveyors of energy, and the atmosphere functioned like a global blanket trapping warmth near the surface, which meant that even the southernmost regions never experienced true winter. Antarctica at that time lay farther north than it does today, and its geographic position combined with open ocean gateways created a unique climatic corridor through which warm currents freely flowed, delivering heat and moisture year-round, while the absence of continental ice sheets meant that solar radiation was absorbed rather than reflected back into space, amplifying global warmth. And under these conditions, Antarctica ceased to be a polar extreme in the modern sense, becoming instead a green and dynamic part of the planet, where climate was not a hostile force, but a stable background against which complex ecosystems could emerge and persist at the very edge of light and darkness, yet far from the grip of ice. Eocene Antarctica appears not as the edge of life, but as a fully developed green continent covered by dense subtropical forests dominated by tree ferns, towering conifers from the Araucarian family, and broad-leafed plants forming a multi-layered canopy, where sunlight filters through the crowns in soft beams, sustaining the understory and creating a stable, humid microclimate while soils remain warm and fertile throughout the year, and rivers slowly meander through wetlands and organic-rich floodplains. The greatest challenge of this world is not cold, but the paradox of light, as months of continuous polar daylight are followed by equally long periods of darkness, forcing plants to adapt by storing energy during summer and entering a slowed metabolic state during winter, not dying, but enduring the absence of light. The animal world reflects this uniqueness as well, with early marsupials, ancestors of modern kangaroos, large birds, and giant penguins that are not yet symbols of ice, but inhabitants of warm coastal waters. And this entire ecosystem exists in a fragile equilibrium, where stable climate allows life to evolve slowly and methodically, accumulating biodiversity and complex interactions that will later be erased from the continent's surface without leaving visible traces behind. The destruction of this green world does not begin with sudden cold or an instant catastrophe, but with slow, almost imperceptible shifts deep within the planet, as tectonic plates move at a pace of only a few centimeters per year, tearing apart ancient land bridges between Antarctica, Australia, and South America. And these geological processes, stretched over millions of years, reshape not only the map of the world, but the very logic of the global climate. Because as the continents drift apart, the oceans gain new pathways for circulation, and the decisive moment comes with the opening of the Drake Passage, which allows the formation of the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, a continuous ring of cold water that begins to spin around the continent, isolating it from the warm currents that once nourished its coasts. And from this point onward, Antarctica enters climatic isolation, for the first time in its history, where heat no longer arrives from outside. Each year becomes slightly colder than the last. Summers grow shorter, winters grow darker, and the thermal balance crosses a critical threshold beyond which ecosystems adapted to long-term stability begin to fail. Trees grow more slowly, forests thin, soils lose fertility, and a landscape that supported life for millions of years starts transforming into a world where survival becomes the exception rather than the rule. The green continent, which for millions of years existed as an almost tropical oasis in the harsh southern hemisphere, begins to transform step by step, almost imperceptibly, over a process spanning millions of years. First, the towering palm trees gradually disappear, replaced by cold-tolerant beech forests that grow more slowly, leaving gaps in the forest canopy and reducing food availability for animals. Then tundra vegetation begins to dominate. Low shrubs, mosses, and lichens capable of surviving limited light and frozen soils. Rivers and lakes that once provided moisture and habitats for aquatic and semi-aquatic life vanish. Soils dry out, organic matter ceases to accumulate, and once multi-layered, stable ecosystems begin to collapse. Finally, the first glaciers appear, slowly but inexorably covering the land with thick ice layers, crushing the soil, destroying remaining vegetation, compressing animal habitats, forcing migration or extinction, and the entire continent transforms into an almost lifeless, frozen desert. This process, known as the glacial apocalypse, represents the culmination of millions of years of climate change. Warm currents are cut off, the sun no longer provides consistent warmth, and life that once thrived must adapt or perish, leaving only tiny traces of past ecosystem grandeur beneath the ice. All flora and fauna, from giant ferns to marsupials and giant penguins, face a catastrophe that forever alters the continent, and Antarctica becomes a symbol of life's fragility, the vulnerability of planetary systems, and the relentless dynamics of climate capable of turning a paradise into a desert in a geologically short span of time. After millions of years of climate change and the gradual transformation of Antarctica from a lush green continent into an icy desert, only subglacial lakes, frozen rivers, and faint traces of life remain, preserved beneath kilometers of ice. Lake Vostok, hidden beneath the thick ice sheet, serves as a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, nature finds ways to survive and maintain the energy of life, almost invisible to the human eye. This buried world becomes a laboratory for science, allowing us to understand not only the past, but also the potential future of the planet. By demonstrating how millions of years of geological and climatic processes can radically reshape continents, water, and atmosphere, the story reminds us that climate is a dynamic pendulum. What seems stable today can change dramatically tomorrow. The ice covering Antarctica is not eternal, and the history of the green jungles shows that the planet can endure enormous catastrophes, but life always depends on flexibility, adaptation, and interaction with the environment. This block brings a philosophical conclusion. Life on Earth is not a linear process, but a constant game between chance and necessity, between resilience and vulnerability, and even vast continents can transform from paradise into desert. Yet traces of the past always remain, reminding us of nature's unpredictability and the value of preserving ecosystems.